And the other reason I tell people that is that you're not limited to leather. There's all kinds of stuff you can work with. And one of the things I actually do is I recommend vinyl if people want to practice and don't want to spend a lot of money on leather. You can get vinyl in any fabric store. It's just that fabric. Don't get the batting back stuff because it makes a big mess. But get the fabric back vinyl and you can cut it, work with it, and get all kinds of stuff. The leather that I traditionally work with is cowhide, especially for floggers. Falls I'm using now, I'll pass this around if you're interested. I'm actually using buffalo for falls. This stuff is gorgeous, and I know that a lot of people like this. I will tell you up front, it smells awesome. It's got a great leather smell. The particular material that I'm going to be using tonight actually is a combination. It's actually going to be half buffalo, half cowhide. Now this is a custom order that I was working on, so that's why I have this stuff here, so I can kill two birds with one stone. I can educate, get paid to work at the same time. It works out for everyone. So I use typically a fairly lightweight cowhide, at least for braiding. For doing the handles, you typically use a heavier weight for falls. Now the nice thing about doing your own toys is that you can get whatever you want. That's the real point. Too many times I've been at events where people will pick up a toy and say, oh, I love this, but I want it shorter, I want it longer, I want more falls, less falls. When you do your own, you can make anything you want. Right? It's completely up to you. 2 colors, 3 colors, whatever you want to do. That's what I recommend. Philosophically, especially when you're talking about floggers, this one's half done. And as I told James, I brought everything kind of in stages so I can show people how to get from one step to the next, kind of like a cooking show. Yeah.
I knew that was you.
Yeah, 30-minute floggers. So the thing to remember about braiding, unless you're getting into single tails, where it's actually really quite functional, braiding is purely decorative. I can make this flogger with a piece of wood and leather. You have a perfectly functional, well-made flogger, but it doesn't have that pulling it out of your bag, look at my flogger kind of thing. Right? When you flash them around, nobody gives a shit. So, you want it to make it look good. The braiding is purely decorative. So what we're going to do is we'll get into a bit of braiding, and then we'll actually get into the construction, how you put these together, which is one of the things that I always concentrated on, always focused on, because if I had my name on one of these, I didn't want somebody to go like this and come back and have no falls. That would be bad. If you have to chase your falls across the room, it does not reflect well on the manufacturer. I didn't want that to happen. So we'll get into a little bit of that as well. So let me clear myself off a little bit of space. A lot of the stuff that you get involved in when it comes to braiding specifically is prepping leather. Once you've got that done, it's just a matter of getting things together. It's really easy. So, we start a flogger with a handle, and I use hardwood. And I would love to tell you more specifically what it is. I don't know. I go to Lowe's and it says hardwood. All right, I'll use that. You can get this stuff. These are 3/4 inch wood dowels, available at any big box hardware store, although I do recommend Lowe's over Home Depot, simply because I've had better experience with the wood. It's just me. So, my handles typically are 8 inches. Cut the dowel to 8 inches. What I do, and this is one of these things for construction that a lot of people don't think about, and you don't notice a lot of times when you're swinging a flogger, until you've been doing it for a while, and then you start to go, it hurts. Tennis elbow attack. So I balance on my floggers. This is a 3/4 inch dowel. I use a 3/8 inch drill bit, and I drill it down to about here, and I fill it with lead. That is lead. It's lead shot, available at any gun store, which are around everywhere. There are more. I'm from Canada, so the fact that there are more gun shops and sex shops really freaks me out. So yeah, I'm the guy in my leather shirt hanging out at the gun store. You own a gun? No, sir, I don't. What are you here for? I'm here to make whips. They just look at you funny. So I fill this with lead shot. This is number 10 lead shot. Anything smaller is hard to get. This is number 10. And even number 10 can be hard to get. After I fill it with lead, I actually fill it with glue. I know that sounds odd, but it's a flogger, not a Morocco. You don't want lead shot. You think the mariachi band's coming through. It's head space is a hard thing to achieve if you're like rattling. So what I do is I fill it to about 1/4 inch from the top, fill it with glue, dribbles down, fill it up again, it goes down, and then you just go until it's filled with glue, and then it's not going to go anywhere. What I do then is I put what's called a bolster around it. That is just a wrap of leather. You'll see there's a little bit of space there, just, to show that. The reason I do that is a couple of reasons. One, it makes the handle a little bit softer. If you just braid it over this, it's one layer of leather and wood, and it has kind of a rigid feel. This actually just gives it, it doesn't pad it, but it gives it a little bit of a softer feel. And being a top, I always like this end to be as comfortable as humanly possible, and that end to be as painful as humanly possible. It's a balance. So, wrap it, and this is just waxed thread. Now this is where you start getting into materials. Wood from hardware store, lead from a gun shop, but any kind of weight will work. Even if you want to use like fishing weights from a sporting goods store, that will work. The wax thread is available just about at any craft store. Look in the beading section. So wax thread is really handy. It's got a great tensile strength. You can just reef on this stuff and it won't break. So wrap that around, and I just use electrical tape so I don't have knots. Because once you start braiding, you feel a lot of these little bumps under there, and you don't want a knot under there. So I just wrap it with tape, and that takes care of that. This is your handle. Next, we move on to the straps we are actually going to use to braid with. Now, typically, my handles are a 6-strand braid. This checkerboard pattern, I'll show you how to do it. But the first question people always ask me is, how do I measure the widths of my strands? How do I figure that out? And there's actually a calculation. And I'm going to give you the calculation. You don't have to write it down. What you can do is I'll hand out cards at the end of the evening. If anybody's interested, I've actually got tutorials on all of these in PDF. I'll send them to you. And in my estimation, they're actually very good. You should enjoy it. So there's a calculation. The calculation is the diameter of your handle, calipers, available again at any craft store. And you have for measuring anything round. If you lay this flat on a ruler, you're doing this. Is it 1 inch, 2 inches? This way I don't have to worry. So, take your measurement. This is 25 millimeters. I'm Canadian, live with the millimeters. Hold on, let me convert. It's actually 1 inch exactly. This is with it braided. So you take your measurement, your diameter, multiply it by 4, and divide by the number of strands. So it's always diameter times 4 divided by the number of strands. 6, 8, 12. That's how you figure it out. Now, a little aside. Leather is not a synthetic material. Unlike synthetic materials, which are great because they're always the same every time. If I go to buy vinyl, Tuesday it's the same vinyl I buy on Wednesday. Not so with leather. It's a natural material and you have to deal with some issues. So that is the calculation for figuring out the strands. But that is the finished measurement, right? So what people do is they go, okay, I've got my measurement, cut my strands don't fit. What's going on? So my usual response is I chuckle to myself, say kinds of funny things, and I move on. Yeah, like an elastic band. I don't know if you'll be able to see this as well or not, but as soon as you put any tension on this, it thins. It gets narrow, just like a rubber band. The wider it goes this way, the narrower it gets this way. So your calculation, if you cut your leather at the measurement that you had, every time you do something, it's bringing that measurement down. It's the widths of your strands down as you process it. So if you leave it like that, you'll get gaps. So what you basically have to do is, with any leather that you use, just kind of feel it, see if it's got a lot of stretch, some has more than others. The more stretch it has, add a little bit of space. It doesn't cost you anything, add a little bit of space. It's like anything. You can always take stuff off, you can't add it back in. So if your strands are too narrow, you wind up having to cut all 6 strands. If you cut them too wide, you can trim a little bit off and you're good to go. So, I always process my strands in a particular way. To try and get rid of some of this stretch, which is actually more of the process than anything else, I take my really fancy tools. You'll notice so far all fancy tools. I have these clips that I use, like so, available at any Kroger for 50 cents. You put them on, and you take your hand, you wet your hand, wet the leather, stretch it as far